Hello and welcome to this CIMA E1 training video from the EXP group. We are still on chapter 2. We're on chapter 2, page 13 of the express notes. And these express notes can be downloaded free of charge if you want to follow them as we go through this program. What we're going to be talking about today, just briefly to finish off this chapter. The first thing is all about social responsibility in business. So what responsibility do businesses have? This is known as corporate social responsibility. You may have heard it referred to as CSR, corporate social responsibility. And it refers to an organization's duty or obligation to look after all of its stakeholders, as opposed to just the shareholders. So there's one maybe more traditional view, historically it's been you have to look after the shareholders. They are the owners of the business. CSR, corporate social responsibilities, argues actually, do we have to look after the wider stakeholders? And in fact, should we? Is it beneficial to look after the wider stakeholders? What we're seeing here is traditionally, CSR was often seen as a burden on the company. It was often seen as a problem, a hassle. But now, it's often seen as a source of opportunity. So it could prove a competitive advantage for the organization. It could help improve a company's reputation. What we're saying here is that CSR often involves what is known as a stakeholder needs analysis. So that's when an organization analyzes what do their stakeholders want. Not just the shareholders, what do all their other stakeholders want. And this almost leads on to a wider debate as to should organizations do the minimum corporate social responsibility they have to do, or should they do more than the minimum required so as to maybe get a competitive advantage. One example of when an organization that does more than is expected on the CSR front, they can be advantageous for them because they can have a good image in the eyes of their employees. That could encourage good quality people to want to work for them. On the customer side of things, if a customer knows that an organization has a very strong CSR policy, it may encourage them to purchase products or services from them. So overall, the thing to look at is not that CSR is necessarily a problem, a hassle. It is required and it can prove to be a source of competitive advantage as well. Okay, at the bottom of this page, we mentioned briefly business and government relationships in both developed and developing economies. Now, what this is talking about is government lobbying. And that is when representatives from either individual businesses or business associations or groups of businesses get together to speak to the government, to lobby them for certain things, to request or discuss or promote certain ideas. Now, as a generalization, we can say in developed countries there's likely to be a higher level of government lobbying, a higher level than is found in the developing countries. Okay, let's move on to the next subject, regulation in the national and international context and its impact on the firm. And to a certain extent, this links into the pestle analysis we talked about in one of the earlier videos. Pestle analysis includes sort of political and legal. And this form of regulation is saying, look, there are a number of areas of regulation present within the business environment. One example, company legislation, company law. And an important one to be aware of is regulation of the level of competition in the market. In the UK, if we use the UK as an example, the government is very keen to encourage competition. So any practices that are seen to discourage competition can be seen to be very bad. So in other words, the government want to encourage competition, encourage fair competition, because that can bring new ideas, cheaper prices, new innovation to the scene. Final thing on this chapter then is talking a bit about country and political risk. So you need to be aware of these concepts. The first one, country risk. As the name suggests, it's a risk of operating within a particular country. So what is a country risk? And that includes the economic, cultural and the political risk of operating in that country. So that leads on, if we say a political risk, there we go. Political risk is a component of the country risk. And it includes, as we're saying here, political stability and political corruption, for example. So in other words, we're saying if an organization is looking at expanding operations into a new country, or is already operating in that country, there would be a country risk, the risks of operating in that country. And that country risk could be broken down into economic, cultural, political. And political risk is just a component of it. And then that includes, what's the risk of the political stability within that country. So almost in summary, country risk is a more general term than political risk. Okay, thank you very much for listening. That finishes this particular video. Thank you.